Well, welcome along on this Friday evening to the State of Scottish Football. This is your weekend preview show. I'm your host, Colin Watt, and we're live on the State of Mind network, which has just recently hit 15,000 subscribers. So a big thank you to everyone who participates. As you'll notice, it isn't Sean once again. This is the third week in a row I've been joined by a new guest. Sean is making his way to Gayfield for Arbroath versus Kilmarnock, and let's hope that Dick Campbell's men get the 3 points this evening. Isn't that right, Jack?
Absolutely, and he was asking me today because I saw him in university. He was asking me, "Oh, do you think it'll be cold at Gayfield?" And I had to say to him, "It could be 30 degrees in clear skies in Arbroath, but you're going to have an absolute howler at Gayfield. It's just one of the coldest grounds in Scotland, and I hope he has a truly terrible time."
And we do love him dearly, but just tonight we hope he has a terrible time. So as you can see, I'm joined by Jack Donnelly and by Struan Garvey. Struan, welcome along on this Friday evening.
Thanks for having me. I too am hoping that Arbroath beat Kelly tonight, but that's just because I like Arbroath. It's nothing against Sean, really.
Not really, but we'll be the anti-Sean group tonight. We are here to preview the weekend's cinch Premiership fixtures. We will be covering all 6 games, giving the rundown on the team news and giving our predictions on how we think the game will go. But before we get into it, gents, some news which just broke about an hour or so ago. Celtic captain Callum McGregor handed a new 5-year deal, which will see him through to 2026. It's an actual 2-year extension onto his deal, which was set to finish in 2024. But Jack, it is a big, important step, I think, for Ange Postecoglou to nail down his captain for another couple of years.
No, you've hit the nail on the head with that, Colin, to be honest. It is the fact that he has that assurance over who his captain's going to be for the next few years, well, 5 years now. I think McGregor's had a pretty good start to the season. I've really kind of enjoyed seeing him take on this new role as full-time captain, of course, following Brown's departure in the summer, heading back up to Aberdeen. And it's something that I'm sure he's going to be really happy to have secured, especially this early on. I mean, Celtic have wavered a bit in various games recently, and I think just having that is not only going to boost his own morale and Postecoglou's morale, but surely the morale of his teammates and their supporters as well.
Yeah, and Struan, with the kind of difficult start that Ange has had, to tie down your captain for a 5-year deal, it shows that you've got faith that this is a long-term project. And as McGregor said, their eye is still on that title this season.
Yeah, of course. I think McGregor's done really well this season, to be honest, under Postecoglou, sort of playing as that lone holding midfielder. And I think a lot of people had questions over him initially, whether he would step up and be an effective captain. And I think he's done the job fantastically well, to be honest. And I think, as you say as well, it does show the belief that they've got in the club and in Ange Postecoglou at the moment, which is a massive bonus.
Yeah, and we'll be covering the Celtic game against Dundee United very shortly. But again, a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us. We're live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, anywhere you can get a video platform, and some others that we're probably not on yet, but will be shortly. We are live, and Jerry, who is a loyal Friday listener, comes in to say, "Hola amigos," joining us all the way from Miami. ¿Cómo estás? Jerry, hope you're doing well, but we are live here tonight. Let's start with the game tomorrow. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff at Dens Park. Dundee versus Rangers. Now, 2 totally different stories coming out of both camps ahead of this game. If we start with the home team, Jack, Leigh Griffiths kicking the flare back into the crowd now looks as if he's going to be facing police charges over this. It's just a case of Leigh Griffiths getting so many opportunities and spurning them every single time.
He really isn't doing himself any favours, is he? And I mean, his apology didn't do a lot to kind of make himself look any more amicable. I mean, look at it from whatever angle you want. You can't say you can see the video of him taking aim at that flare and saying he didn't mean to volley it back into the crowd. I mean, he had the target clear in his mind as soon as it left his foot. It was always going to end up back in the crowd, and this was always going to fall out. And the apology, he said he didn't mean it. It's a bit lax from me, to be honest. I'm not sure entirely. I'm convinced by what Griffiths was saying after the game, but I can imagine the charge is probably fair. I mean, and I know there's been a lot of people on social media that have been clamouring saying, would it be the same if it was to happen to another player? And I feel like it just would. I mean, in a case like this, where it's been targeting the fans rather than anything else happening on the pitch, I feel like any player in the same situation would receive the similar condemnation and punishment from his club and the authorities potentially as well. So really not covering himself in any glory and really not doing himself any favours and repairing what's already been a damaged reputation this season.
Struan, an interesting point coming in here from the Facebook user. If you are watching on Facebook, you do have to register with StreamYard for your name to come up on the screen, so that's how we've not got it here. But it is saying shouldn't be throwing flares onto the pitch, and he's right, or he or she is right. They shouldn't be throwing flares onto the pitch. You shouldn't have them in the ground. But in this case, it's not an idea of two wrongs make a right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fans shouldn't really be throwing a flare onto the pitch, or any object onto the pitch for that matter. But at the same time, I don't know what Leigh Griffiths is thinking, to be honest. When I read the apology to say he didn't mean to kick it into the stands, it was just hard not to grin at that, because to be perfectly honest, that's exactly what it looks like he's trying to do. And as you say, again, it's another opportunity and he's just throwing it away. It's something really stupid. I mean, when I saw that apology, I just initially thought, that's just not even close to what he's intended to do, to be honest. He's kicked that back in. I can understand it must be annoying having a flare thrown on the pitch. From his point of view, it's terrible. But at the same time, that doesn't really give him the right to kick it back into the fans to react. I think in that situation, he needs to just let it go, get on with it, slightly kick it to the side. That was a proper punt, to be honest. I don't know what else he was intending to do with that amount of power. I mean, he's a professional footballer. He knows how to kick a ball. I mean, you surely think he'd be able to slightly tap a flare out of play, or at least ask a steward to get it, not take a running free kick to it.
It was probably the thing he's connected the best with over the last 6 months, was that flare. In fact, I seen a fantastic meme on social media, because social media picks up on this right away and they turn everything into a joke. And it was a clip that says, when Leigh Griffiths kicked the flare back into the crowd, it actually hit my gran. And it was the scene from Still Game where Isa gets the blue ink over her face. That was outstanding.
That was brilliant.
Fantastic.
Social media has got its downsides, but sometimes it just pulls it out the bag like that. Kenny Whitson comes in with this point, and I can't remember if it was yourself, Jack, or if it was Struan. It says, would it be such a headline if Tony Watt or Liam Boyce had done it? I genuinely think it would. I can kind of see the idea, though, because Leigh Griffiths has always got his name in the headlines, and when he does something like that, it's just easy clickbait for the press.
No, I do completely agree, and I can understand where Kenny's coming from in saying it might not be as big a deal if Watt or Boyce or another striker would have done the same, or another player even. But I think it is just the fact that Griffiths has had his name in the press negatively over the summer. We know that for a fact. And I feel like a lot of people are just going to be able to jump on the back of this and make a story out of it. But I do genuinely think that if it was someone else in the league or someone else within Scottish football doing the exact same, it would get picked up the same, potentially not covered in his depth as it has been, but there definitely would be at least some coverage of it.
Yeah, and to be fair to James McPake, he said it won't stop him picking him ahead of this game on Saturday. Struan, does look as though Charlie Adam could also make a return to the squad, returning from injury. But the player that has really been frozen out since Leigh Griffiths has signed is Jason Cummings, but he is Dundee's top goal scorer this season.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I was sort of thinking when Leigh Griffiths came in, how they're going to balance it. Glenn and I were speaking on the Tuesday show talking about they've got so many forwards now. And at the weekend game, when Killian Sheridan came on and Jason Cummings, they looked quite lively, to be honest. And I think it's a good problem for McPake to have these options up front, because as we know, Dundee are still looking for the first win. And it's times like these where you really need your forward players to show up. One thing I found really interesting from the Dundee derby was that sort of connection that Marshall seemed to have with Leigh Griffiths. He was finding him very well. And I feel if Leigh Griffiths can get back to his form, or even 3/4 of what he used to be, he can be absolutely fantastic. There were chances in that game that a lot of people were saying, if that's a fully fit firing Leigh Griffiths, he buries 2 or 3 of those chances. And he's a type of player who, if you get a free kick at the end of the game, even from a corner, he's a set piece specialist. He's the type of player who can create a goal out of nothing. And I think that's something absolutely massive for Dundee. Jason Cummings, obviously, he's been sort of all over the place, to be honest. Shrewsbury, Rangers, Hibs, Nottingham Forest recently as well. He's coming to Dundee. I thought it was a good signing last season in the Championship. I think it's going to be good for him to have somebody like Leigh Griffiths working with him. 15-year-old Struan talking about a Hibs connection. Cummings and Griffiths was probably a dream for me to be a strike partnership, but I never envisaged it to be happening in 2021 at Dundee, let alone with Killian Sheridan also part of it and James McPake, the manager. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how Cummings can fit his way into this team and if he can stake a claim, because obviously you'd expect if Griffiths is fit, he's going to be playing week in, week out. As you said, James McPake said that Griffiths is going to be playing at the weekend already, so it's quite clear that in his mind, Griffiths is already the number one striker.
And we'll touch on the Rangers team news in a second, but just to give you some breakdown, if you are looking to put a coupon on this weekend, as always, we urge that you bet responsibly. But the odds for the two teams, Dundee at home are 11-1, 19-4 gets you the draw, and 1-4 for Rangers. Big odds for Dundee if they can pull something out the bag, but on recent form, you wouldn't bet on it, I don't think. Now, the big news coming out the Rangers camp today is the discussion that Ianis Hagi has been linked with a January move to Jose Mourinho's Roma, and the price, according to the Romanian press, is sat around £17 million. Now, Jack, first of all, do you think there's anything in this at all?
I mean, 17 million is a lot of money when you think. I'm not necessarily convinced Hagi's a £17 million player, but if Rangers are able to recuperate that amount of money for him, then they've done absolutely fantastic work. I can see why Mourinho and Roma would be after him. I think he is a very good player, very technically astute, and he influences a game whenever he comes on. I think you saw that the other day when he came on in the Cup again. So I feel like there might be a chance that he gets a move away, but I'm not entirely sure how convinced I am that it's going to be in January, because from all reports, he was absolutely clamouring to play for Rangers when he did sign, and he was really, really invested in the project, really invested in his position within this team. So I think it would take an awful lot to convince the player to make the move, and that's why I'm not entirely convinced that there would be anything too strong in this just yet.
Struan, do you think if a bid of that ilk was to come in for Hagi, he would still be a Rangers player when the January transfer window closes?
It's hard money to turn down, to be perfectly honest, for Hagi. He's one of these players who every time I watch him, I think he could be fantastic, and then the next time I watch him, just not sure. I mean, obviously he's got quite a tagline to live up to in his dad, but of course he's looked good in Scotland, to be honest. And £17 million, I didn't realise that was the fee until you said that there, and I was sort of taken aback, to be honest, because I think that's absolutely fantastic. Of course, he came from, well, I don't think he came from, but he has spent time in Italy with Fiorentina in the past, so there maybe is an attraction there. Roma have started well. Getting to work under Jose Mourinho could be a big push factor for him to go there. But at the same time, I think Roma, I don't know if he'd necessarily even start for Roma at the same time, likes of Henrik Mkhitaryan, Zaniolo, Pellegrini, Tammy Abraham. There's a lot of attack power up in that front line, so I don't know if he'd even start for them. So from his point of view, is it better to just stay at Rangers rather than taking a big gamble?
And it'll be interesting to see if any of those bids do come through. I'm sure there will be interest in January. And it'll all come down to what the Rangers accounts are looking at come that window as well. How they're getting on in Europe, I'm sure that'll all come into it. Ahead of this game on Saturday, which is a 3:00 kickoff, it is live on pay-per-view for anyone who is interested, and it is £12.50 for that from DTV. Rangers are without Ryan Jack, Helander and Ryan Kent, who's out for 4 weeks. He's someone, Jack, that just hasn't really got going for Rangers this year, and they are struggling without him, but Scott Wright just seems to be kind of filling in that gap quite nicely.
I think Kent, for as long as he's been in Scotland, he has been a very divisive player. Like, I think he has his fans, absolutely, but I think he's got just as many critics, if not more. And I feel those critics have potentially multiplied even more by a fairly shoddy start to this league season. And when he's on, he's absolutely fantastic, and there's very few players in the league that can probably match him. But I think rightly so, he has been criticised this season. He's just not looked at it at all. Even so, having him sidelined for a month is going to be a massive concern for Gerrard. And I know Scott Wright's come in and he's done fairly well, you would say, and there was a lot of talk about him potentially getting a Scotland call-up ahead of the World Cup qualifiers and things like that. So he's certainly caught the eye of a lot of people within Scotland, Scott Wright. So he's filled the gap well. But I think when Ryan Kent's on the top of his game, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better player to suit Gerrard's Rangers than him.
Yeah, and obviously Hagi's tried to fill that gap in. I think if it wasn't for him, then they would have struggled in that second half of the League Cup match against Livingston. Obviously going on to win 2-0, and they've been drawn against Struan's Hibs in the semi-final. Struan, what did you make of the draw?
I was quite gutted, to be perfectly honest, but to be honest, it was a bit of a lose-lose-lose situation. You know, it was 3 tough ties. I did want St Johnstone to try and get a bit of payback, and also in my mind I thought, you know, you kind of want to see the old firm engage, but that could easily be the final, to be honest. But it was difficult. But at the same time, being optimistic, if there ever is a time to play Rangers, could be in November at the end because they're not looking that great. Kent might not be back at that point in time. You never know.
Well, you never know. It's a 90-minute game. Anything can happen. But Rangers obviously play this game before their trip to Sparta Prague on Thursday night, so it'll be interesting to see which side they put out. Maybe they'll rest some players after that opening game defeat to Lyon. But we are 15 minutes in. It's time for a prediction. We're running a bit behind schedule. So I'm going to start it off. I fancy, for the coupon this week, Rangers to win 3-0. I'll go to you, Jack.
I mean, you just look at the stats. It's top versus bottom. Dundee are still to actually win a game. And even though I feel like Rangers could potentially use this game as a bit of a tester and try and rest some of their key men for the midweek game against Sparta Prague, I still do think it's going to be a fairly professional result for them this weekend. And I'll say 2-0 to Rangers this weekend.
2-0. Struan, wrap it up.
I'm also going with 2-0. I think, although Dundee have some promising signs, and although Rangers have started poorly, I still think they'll have enough to get this game over the line.
So all three of us going for a Rangers victory. Jerry H coming in to say 4-0 to Rangers. Paul Cockwell, a resident Hibs, saying a Rangers draw. Strange Love the Doctor, maybe a bit biased here, saying Dundee with Griff getting a hat-trick. And Daniel Mack saying 4-1 to Rangers. Again, for every game, bring in your predictions and we will discuss them on air. Let's move on to Sunday's game at Celtic Park. It is Celtic versus Dundee United. Just recently announced that this one is on pay-per-view for any Dundee United fans who are, I mean, let's be honest, it's ridiculous you're not getting tickets for this game. I could go on and on about that, but the fact that Celtic haven't let any away fans into the ground this season really does anger me, especially last night when that away section was absolutely empty. $12.99 for the pay-per-view. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff on Sunday. If you are putting on the coupon, it's 1-6 for Celtic, 13-2 for the draw, and 14-1 for Dundee United. Some big odds to be had this weekend. Now, we just spoke there, Jack, about Callum McGregor getting the new 5-year deal, but he's out injured at the moment, and his replacement is James McCarthy. Now, at first, he wasn't really hitting the header, but a good assist last night, and he seems to be growing into the role.
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions surrounding McCarthy. Even before he came in, there was a lot of questions of whether Celtic should even be looking to involve him with this team. And he really didn't seem to be cutting the mustard when he first started making appearances, but of course did get the assist last night. I think he's a capable replacement, but I think, again, like I mentioned with Wright replacing Kent for Rangers, I think it's going to be very hard to find a level replacement for Callum McGregor in that role, especially when he does it so well for both club and country, as we've seen over the last couple of seasons especially. And I think he's really just built on his reputation, on his game, and he's really adopted this new leadership role as he has been able to without Brown being there to kind of have him as his deputy. So yeah, I think while McCarthy's been all right, I still think Celtic would obviously prefer to have McGregor in the role. Yeah,
it's obviously a big loss to the side, Struan, not having their captain in there. As we said, McCarthy's sort of grown into the role, but they're sort of two different players. McGregor offers you that option going forward, whereas McCarthy sits a bit further back, and I think it is telling at the moment that Celtic seem to struggle getting into that final third and actually creating options through the middle without having Callum McGregor in the side.
Yeah, definitely. I think Callum McGregor has been one of the best players under Postecoglou, and I think it was really interesting the way that he's sort of taken on that lone holding midfield role with Turnbull and Rogic, for example, flanking him on either side, and I think he's done the role really effectively. I've seen it for Scotland as well a few times. You know, he's been fantastic in the national side in recent games, and I do like McCarthy as a signing. I know he has had his injury issues, but I can see it being a scenario where he may play in the bigger games to just give that sort of assurance to the back four. I think he could have been used last week in Europe. Obviously, he came on around the 55th minute, but the game was sort of gone at that point. I do think, though, he is a better option than Ismail Soro, because I've just not been impressed at all with him this season. I think he's a walking yellow card, to be honest. And I think McCarthy gives that assurance and just sort of experience as well to help the team, because we've seen the Celtic back four changing quite a lot. It's a very inexperienced back four as well. Young players like Stephen Welsh coming in. So I think he can definitely help in that sense.
Speaking about the inexperience, we saw the debut last night of recent signing Liam Scales. And at least if it's a bit of a competition, Jack, between Scales and Montgomery for the left back role, and to be honest, as it stands, I think either one of them could get the jersey.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, especially when you were kind of going into recent games, I mean, Josip Juranovic was starting the Old Firm as a left back, and it seems as though Postecoglou is ready to dethrone Anthony Ralston from that position and give that to Juranovic as a whole. So I feel like it definitely will come down to Scales and Montgomery for left back, especially with Taylor sidelined at the moment. But I mean, as a Celtic fan yourself, Colin, you'll know better between the pair of them. So I suppose I'll turn it back on you. And if I can ask, which would you prefer for the role based on what you've seen from both at the moment in time?
I was very impressed with Scales when he came on last night. I thought he was, first of all, he's very, very quick, which I wasn't expecting. He's tall, he's commanding, and he looked very comfortable on the ball. Now, that's only maybe 15, 20 minutes that I saw of him last night. I think Montgomery, anytime he's been asked to do that role, has been very impressive and has stepped up and not really let Celtic down at any point. The thing I would consider, though, is maybe playing the two of them and having Scales at left back and Montgomery one further forward, because I think Montgomery can play both roles and he can play them very effectively. And at the minute, I'm not overly convinced about Jota being a left-sided, right-footed player. I just don't think it kind of suits the way Celtic want to play at the moment. And he looked far more comfortable in the European game against Betis when he was on the right-hand side. So if you're going to try and fit him into the team, I would play him on the right and have the two young boys on the left-hand side, especially in this game against Dundee United. Speaking of Dundee United, Struan, they are going in there very much like Celtic with quite a few injury problems, and that all comes from the defeat to Hibs last night. Callum McGregor and Mark McNulty coming off the park, and they look as though Callum McGregor won't get his homecoming at Celtic Park this weekend.
I think that's an absolutely massive loss, to be honest. He didn't really take the headlines in the Dundee derby, but I thought Mulgrew was excellent, to be honest. The game-saving tackle that he made at the end was just phenomenal. The experience and the leadership that he brings to that side as well, especially for the young players like Kerr Smith in there. I think he's just vital, to be honest. Mark McNulty as well, I think, is a big loss. You know, we've seen he has goals in him. You know, he's not been the most prolific of strikers, but he is up there. He can score the goals. So to have that option away, I think, is a bad one. And I guess as well, you'd have to play the option of set pieces. We know that's been a weakness for Celtic so far, last season and coming into this season. Somebody like Mulgrew has a delivery on him and a presence in the box. So I think that'll be a massive loss for United, especially when they've done really well in the big games in the league this season. Obviously, the victory over Rangers and the win in the derby. This could be a game they could have taken something from, but those are two massive losses coming into it.
It's quite interesting when you look at Dundee United's form in the league so far. They've scored 3 goals in 6 games and only conceded 4. That suggests a team that's not the most attractive to watching yet. Some of the games I've saw them play, it just looks as if they're a solid team at the back, but they struggle going forward. And that loss of Mark McNulty, I think, is a big one, because they've not got someone who can come in. They obviously sold Shankland to Beerschot in Belgium. McNulty being out the side, you're relying on Clark to kind of pop up with the goals. It was Peter Pollitt that got the goal against Hibs last night. But the question everybody is asking after that game last night, and Struan, I want an honest answer here, was that a penalty?
Yes. Nah.
Oh, Jack.
You know what? Just play devil's advocate. I'll say no. I'll just oppose Struan. I'll say no.
I have to say, I don't think it was a penalty. I really don't. I think that Reynolds gets across and wins the ball, and then was it Boyle that was going through?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I think he goes down far, far too easily.
Yeah,
I think if you had VAR, you turn that one round. Although I did see the penalty that wasn't given at Man City the other day, so maybe VAR doesn't turn that one round.
I'm quite happy there's not VAR with some of the penalty decisions, to be honest. That Man United West Ham game, I think, is an example of the amount that VAR can ignore. But yeah, Tam Court said in the post-match interview as well that a few big decisions went against them, and he does have a point, to be honest.
Well, here's the thing. Paul Cockwell says it was a stone waller, and then someone else comes in to say it was never a pen, come on. So, I mean, it just shows you, I honestly don't think it was a penalty, but Kenny Whitson comes in to say it's a high B, not a penalty, and a good goal disallowed for United. But them's the breaks. It was McGinn, not Boyle, correct. It was Paul McGinn going through. Yeah, I think, I don't even think it would have been enough for Dundee United to get back into it. Hibs did have a very good first half. Dundee United, though, you look at it, as we said, 3 goals in 6 games, 4 goals conceded, without Mulgrew, without McNulty, going to Celtic Park, it's always a very difficult place to go. And getting into the predictions, I think Celtic will win 3-0. Struan, I'll go to you next.
I'm gonna stick with my first prediction from the other game as well, and I'm gonna go 2-0. I know Celtic have liked the odd 6-0 here or there, but I can only say 2 for this one, to be honest. But at the same time, this is one of those games where I could easily see United sneaking a ridiculous 1-0 to Harks or Dylan Levitt, or a strike from range, and Celtic dominating the 70% and then just not creating anything with it. But I'll go with my gut and say 2-0 Celtic.
Yeah, I'll stick with your gut as well. Jack?
I don't know. I always feel like I never like. I'm like you, Colin. Like, you look at the stats behind Dundee United and you think they're not exactly the best team to watch. And a lot of times last season they absolutely were that. They were not enjoyable to watch whatsoever. But there's some good players in there, and I feel like they're going to make it a bit harder for Celtic than it potentially would need to be. Of course, Celtic have still got some injuries themselves. Of course, McGregor's out, Taylor's out, and of course, Kyogo Furahashi's out, and he was absolutely electric for the first couple of few weeks of the season, rather. So I feel like, well, I do believe Celtic will win. It's going to be a lot tighter than what some could predict already. So I'm just going to go a narrow 1-0 to Celtic. Of course, they do have a massive midweek tie themselves at home to Bayer Leverkusen as well. That might be at the forefront of Postecoglou's mind. And they might have to balance things again this weekend.
And just before we move on, has anyone ever seen Georgios Giakoumakis?
Is that who they signed? I'm not too sure.
No, anybody? No.
What?
No.
Is he just not involved whatsoever? Is that?
So he got injured in the warm-up. He got injured in the warm-up last night. So it just shows you the kind of injury problems Celtic are facing at the minute. Yeah, so if anybody sees Georgios, pass on his our best wishes from the state of Scottish football team, and we'll see him some point, I'm sure.
Is there any update on this? Is a calf injury he's picked up now?
It was a calf injury, yeah. So he's been sent for a scan, and we've not seen it yet. I've not seen him yet. He's not even had a picture with Paul the Tim, so I'm not convinced he's signed it. Staying on Sunday, it's a 3:00 kick-off at Easter Road as Struan's Hibs take on St Johnstone, the Cup victors. St Johnstone, the Cup dynamos it has to be, as they look to defend their titles. They're in the semi-final against Celtic. It's 2nd versus 8th, and if you're sticking this one on the coupon, you'll get 5-6 for Hibs, 13-5 for the draw, and 10-3 for St Johnstone. Now, both teams come into this having secured their passage into the Premier Scots semi-final. Hibs have done it without Doidge, Hallberg, Murphy and Mackey. Now, before we actually get into the game, something I noticed this week, which I don't know if it's been discussed yet, Struan, is Hibs are looking to introduce safe standing. Whereabouts in Easter Road is that planning to be?
I think it's up the back of the west stand, or the east stand, potentially. I can't believe I'm not even fully sure. I'm pretty sure I've actually seen both answers be given to that one.
I think it'll be a good thing. I think Easter Road's always a place that does well for atmosphere, and I think the standing section adds to that. The only thing I would say is wouldn't put it in the way that Kilmarnock put it in, which is just randomly in the middle of a tier, because that just went terribly wrong.
They've added new screens as well at Easter Road. A lot of good developments going on there.
Interesting to see. Obviously, the backing of Ron Gordon there is doing Hibs the world of good, as it looks as if discussions have opened up for a new contract for Kevin Nisbet. How important has he been in Hibs' run so far?
He was absolutely excellent last season, to be honest. Especially in the cup games, he was coming up with the big moments. He's not started this season quite in the same way as last, but at the same time, he's obviously a threat. There was so much interest from the likes of Swansea and Birmingham City, last January and over the summer. And if he is going to commit his future to Hibs, I think it's a massive bonus. We've seen now he's in the Scotland squad. He's come up with a few goals here, there internationally as well. And I've been quite impressed with him in a Scotland shirt and in a recent fixture as well. In the game, in our first or second international game there after Denmark, he provided pretty good link up as well with Nathan Patterson and Lyndon Dykes. And I think he's just in a really good run of form at the moment. He's still only 24. He's got a massive career ahead of him. And if he can spend a few more years of that at Hibs, I'll be a very happy spectator.
I think it will be very difficult to hold on to him, whether that be January or in the summer. But someone else who's been on fire, Jack, is Martin Boyle. I think, is that 9 goals already for the season he's got? Apologies, I do have a cold. But Martin Boyle, again, he's someone who I've always thought would get a move to a bigger club, but the longer Hibs keep him, the more of a threat he is in the league.
Yeah, no, he just seems to have really found his feet at Hibs completely. I mean, I know there was talk of a late move up to Aberdeen for a fairly nominal fee, considering what Hibs would be looking for him. But obviously, that just was discredited very, very quickly. And he's been absolutely electric, easily Hibs' top performer in my eyes this season. And he just does have the ability to turn a game on its head and really grab it by the scruff of the neck and drag it into a sense of positivity for his side. And Hibs fans love him. What else can you say about him? Like he's their star man, as they do sing every now and then. So there's a lot to be happy about if you're a Hibs fan and you're a Martin Boyle fan. And he's been absolutely fantastic this season. And it's good to watch him a lot of the time. He's a very entertaining player to watch. So yeah, happy to see him doing so well, and happy to see him hopefully continue that for a while yet.
It did sound as if Struan was singing that song in his head as you were saying it. I could see the head moving along there. Let's look at St Johnstone though. Again, a victory over Dundee in the Premier Sports Cup. I don't know if you guys saw the after-match press conference. It was Ali Crawford and Sean Rooney. And there is at least a foot of difference between Sean Rooney and Ali Crawford. It's like a dad taking their boy out and then getting stopped and interviewed. It was unbelievable. It was one of those ones. Do you remember back when Aaron Lennon played for Spurs and he was standing next to Peter Crouch? It was one of those moments. But speaking of Ali Crawford, he is filling that gap that was left by Ali McCann's departure down south. And I think now that St Johnstone have the European ambitions out of the road, I could see them really kicking on, and they've picked up the victory over Aberdeen last week, a Stevie May winner. Now, Dr. Grant was on here last week, and he actually predicted that Stevie May would score the winner against his Aberdeen side, Jack. So it was written in the stars for that to happen, wasn't it?
So it's more to the point that Grant Campbell's never going to make a prediction against Aberdeen at the end, considering how well he got that one right. They've needed to kind of turn this corner, to be honest, St Johnstone. I mean, however many games it was that they just couldn't find a win, and their impressive performances in Europe aside, they've really needed to start getting results, the results on the board, and they've turned that corner and they've been doing well. And I have been quite impressed by Crawford because it's a big role to fill, in the one that McCann left going down south, but he's done the job he's needed to do, and he's really kicked on, and St Johnstone are really benefiting from that. So been impressed by him, and I'm just a big fan of this St Johnstone side. I have been since last season. I think Callum Davidson's a very good manager and seems like a good guy as well, which of course does count for a lot. Not much in terms of results, but in the public perception, absolutely. And it's two big results on the bounce, and considering the recent history between these two sides, I wouldn't necessarily bet against the same happening again this weekend.
Oh, interesting. Struan, someone who you've actually seen play for Hibs as well, has joined St Johnstone in Efe Ambrose. And I think he's offered a bit more experience into what was a fairly young backline at St Johnstone. And having someone in there, okay, he's got the odd bomb scare in him, but that experience on the international stage, playing in Europe, it must help that St Johnstone backline.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, it's a backline as well who have lost their captain, so to have somebody who has that experience is absolutely massive. I was quite gutted Hibs never actually made a move with our centre half struggles as well, to be honest. But yeah, he's going to be a massive player for them. And I think, as you say, it's the experience that he brings to that side. Obviously, it's been a very up and down season so far for St Johnstone. You know, the highest of highs at the end of last year, and then this season it just hasn't quite gone the way they'd have planned, losing their best player and captain. So I think there's definitely going to be a bit of disruption in the squad. Having somebody like Efe Ambrose come in, I think will be absolutely massive for them.
I wonder if he will be doing backflips at Easter Road this weekend. Struan really hopes not, but let's get into the predictions. Some already coming in here on the chat. Daniel Mack coming in to say 2-1 to Hibs, and do you know what? I'm going to back that. I'm also going to go 2-1 Hibs. Struan, as a Hibs fan, what do you see happening on Sunday?
Do you know, I've predicted Hibs to beat St Johnstone so many times in recent memory, and I'm convinced that I've jinxed it. So I'm going to try and reverse that by saying a 1-0 St Johnstone victory.
Oh, come on. Against your own team? You're not going to back your own team?
I'm worried because every time I've backed Hibs, and last season when Middleton scored the one goal prior to the cup final, and I thought, right, that's the loss out of the way, they'll win the cup. just not. I'm a bit worried. You know, I'll go 1-0. I won't be too pessimistic. I don't like to be pessimistic.
That's a lie.
I was very close. I was so close to muting you there, Jack. How's it going?
To be fair, I was going to back a 1-1 as well, to be honest, because as much as fortune has favoured St Johnstone recently in these ties, I think Hibs are just a bit of a better team this season. I think I've been impressed by them. So, yeah, I think probably a draw, but St Johnstone are kind of getting themselves back in amongst it where they want to be.
I've got to say, there's some other predictions coming in here. Jerry H, 1-0 to St Johnstone. Sean Rooney getting the goal. Now, Kenny Whitson brings up a really good point here. I'll take a goal for Hibs against Saints. Not done that in 7 games. So maybe, Struan, maybe I was a bit harsh on you there.
That's what I think. Every time I think they're going to do it, it just doesn't happen. Especially in the Cup, that was the worst.
Well, so am I the only one that's actually backed the Hibs win then?
Yep. You must be, yeah.
Oh, well.
2 draws over here.
13-5 on that draw if you are both confident. Let's move on and come a bit closer to home. Well, for me anyway, it is a trip to Paisley for St Mirren versus Aberdeen. Now, the talking point going into this game, which is your live TV game this weekend on Sky Sports, it's a 12 noon kickoff on Sunday for St Mirren versus Aberdeen. Just before we go into it, the odds, if you're sticking this one on the coupon, 19-10 for St Mirren, 21-10 for the draw, and Aberdeen an interesting 14-9. Now, as in recent years, if you'd seen Aberdeen going to St Mirren, you would probably expect them to be a bit closer to evens, maybe even less than evens. But when you look at Aberdeen's run of form, 2 draws, 2 losses in the last 4, Struan, and Stephen Glass now, he's been in that job best part of 6-7 months. He's starting to come under a lot of pressure, especially from Aberdeen fans, and looking at the next run of games they've got, he's going to have to pick up some points somewhere.
I think definitely. Well, one of the most concerning things in my eyes is their inability to keep clean sheets. You know, apart from United on the first day of the season, they haven't been able to keep any team out. And although St Mirren are still looking for their first victory of the season, they played well against Hibs last weekend, and they need to be looking at this Aberdeen side and saying, we can get at them. You know, they have issues in defence. They've not been able to put the ball in the back of the net. And creatively, Calvin Ramsey seems to be their best player going forward for their recent fixtures. So it's definitely the opportunity for St Mirren. On the flip side of the coin for Stephen Glass, it's obviously a concern for him the way the side have been playing recently. It's just not going well. We've seen the social media cries from Aberdeen fans. It's just not going well at all, to be perfectly honest. The way they started the season, it looked like they were going to be something totally different. And I've seen people saying that this wouldn't have happened under McInnes, and now it's coming home that you think Stephen Glass is under that pressure now. That
is a really interesting point, because I've seen a lot of people saying that when you had the Derek McInnes style of football, yes, it was boring, but it got results.
Yeah.
And that's why they didn't want him to stay on as manager. They wanted something fresh. Stephen Glass has come in. He's brought in new players. They're playing an attacking style of football. They had 11 shots on target against St Johnstone at the weekend. They have been without one of their talisman in Ryan Hedges, Jack, but it's just a case of Aberdeen have opened up, and they've opened up at the other end as well, and it's leading to them shipping some goals.
Well, I mean, Colin, to put it into perspective, 11 shots on target, but they didn't score any against St Johnstone, so that's really what matters most. And even if they are only reducing that to maybe 2 or 3 a game, as long as one goes in, that's going to mean a hell of a lot more than the 8 or 9 that they missed. So I feel like it's a really, really crucial point for Glass at the moment in time. I mean, looking at the league standings, 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses, 6 scored and 6 conceded. So it is equal across the board. There is basically just a big circle around that Aberdeen side, and just a bit of a 0 at the moment. They are perfectly balanced, but things need to improve, to be quite honest with you. I mean, they've not won since the opening weekend. They've not won since
12th of August, isn't it? Yeah.
12th of August against Aberdeen, and then 8th of August in the league away to Livingston. Sorry, it's been dire since then, to be quite honest. And they've only drawn twice. The rest have been losses in those other 7 games. So big improvement needed. And I'm not entirely convinced that they're going to find it against St Mirren, because as we've seen over the years, Jim Goodwin knows how to put together a good, solid defensive team. So I feel like, especially without players like Hedges, they really are going to struggle in Paisley this weekend.
Interesting you brought up Jim Goodwin. I'm going to mention him and his comments in a minute to see what you think of them. But when you look at it, Aberdeen's last league win against St Mirren at New St Mirren Park was back in December 2018, so it isn't somewhere that they're comfortable going to get up the points. Now, here's a point that comes in from John Mulhern. It says, if Stephen Glass gets the sack, does Bruni get the job? Now, the other one comes in from Kenny Whitston saying, is Glass a couple of poor results away from the sack? We're honestly sitting here at the end of September suggesting that the Aberdeen manager's going to get the sack after the amount of money that he had to spend. He's probably had more money than any of the transfer windows that Derek McInnes had, and he's been heavily backed not only by the fans at the beginning, but also by the chairman. And to be honest with you, looking at the next run of games, if they're sitting in the bottom six after those, questions will seriously be asked. We spoke about this before we came on air, Jack. Obviously, you're an Ayr United fan. You got rid of Davy Hopkins early doors. You got it fixed. Can Aberdeen afford to let this go on, or will they have to be prompt? And could it be a case that Scott Brown gets his opportunity in management long before he expected to? Even if it's only on a temporary basis, it has to be said. I'm not saying that he'll get it permanently.
Yeah, I can definitely see it being an avenue that they might want to consider, but they just do need to take into account what the reaction would be, because obviously they brought him in midway through last season. Of course, they got rid of McInnes midway through the last campaign and brought Glass in to bleed in his principles to the players there, and he could sell his vision on them early doors and get things settled coming into the new season. But that just really hasn't gone to plan other than the opening few weekends, and I don't know if it's potentially been the right decision. I mean, Kenny Whitson's saying again that Glass as a manager in the States only had a 25% win record. That is 1 every 4 games that he's actually winning. So that's, for a club like Aberdeen, that's really not good enough. So I'm just not sure whether they can afford to. I'm not entirely clued up on the situation with Aberdeen's finances, or whether they can afford to let him go or keep him on. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, because I think there could be a lot of truth in the fact that after a couple more bad results, things could be looking dim for Stephen Glass.
Yeah, Brown Warrior is in the chat with all the Glass puns, so if you're reading that, it's worth a link. It's safe to say at the minute Aberdeen are currently walking on broken glass as they go into this tie against St Mirren. Probably not the best one, but I'll take that clap. Thanks for the sympathy, Struan. Talking about St Mirren, they pulled out a draw against Hibs last week, and Shaughnessy was voted man of the match. Now, when I look at that back three of Shaughnessy, McCarthy and Fraser, it does look like a solid foundation for St Mirren to build upon, but I think just like a couple of teams in the league, their problem is getting the ball in the back of the net. Eamon Brophy scoring only his second goal of the season at the weekend, but apart from that, I don't really see where the goals come from.
It's interesting. A lot of people were saying at the start of the season that St Mirren will do well if Jamie McGrath does well. And I think that's very telling. And it seems like a very simple statement to make, but I think it's so accurate because St Mirren rely a lot on his creativity and what he can bring. And as you say, Eamon Brophy is not exactly a prolific striker. His goal at the weekend was very well taken, but Shaughnessy up in the other end of the pitch playing as a striker got the equaliser. It's not exactly what you'd necessarily want in that situation. You want your strikers to be scoring your goals. And as we've said, St Mirren are still to get the first victory of the season. It's good that they have a solid foundation. And I suppose that's a big positive that, if you can start keeping the goals out, hopefully 1 or 2 of them will come up the other end. But at the same time, they are heavily relying on Jamie McGrath, who almost left them at the end of the transfer window.
Yeah. Now, we did mention Jim Goodwin a couple of minutes ago. And I have a quote from Jim Goodwin after the game on Saturday, whatever day the game was. Referee decisions are costing us points. Ryan Porteous is known to go down very easily. It was a very soft penalty. I mean, of all the people, I think I'll throw it to Struan for some feedback on that.
There's been quite a few calls for Hibs soft penalties, haven't there? I'm starting to see a trend here, but it's 2 arms around him in the box, to be honest, going down. It's one of those ones where if a referee sees it, it's hard not to give in those situations in the tussles. There was a similar one in the down south in one of the Wolves games, so it's tough to say. It's soft, definitely soft, to be honest. I can understand why Goodwin is being annoyed. It's one of those ones where if it happens to your player, you're saying, oh, he's been brought down in the box. And likewise, if your team's the one who've given away the penalty and conceded it, you'd say it's soft. It shouldn't necessarily be given. I can easily see the referee overlooking that on another day of the week, to be honest. I think it's interesting that he does pick up on Porteous saying he does go down too easy, because I think at the other end of the pitch, a lot of people say that Porteous has a mistake in him making a bad tackle and giving away the penalty himself.
I think Porteous is he's still learning a lot.
Yeah.
I think in the Edinburgh Derby, there was some occasions where I thought if you had a bit more of an experienced head, you would get yourself out of these situations, and he kept I think he gave away a corner at one point where he was down near the corner flag, and all he had to do was put it out for a throw, and he tried to be smart about it and ended up conceding the corner. Things like that can come back to bite you in the backside. Jack, this is Jim Goodwin without a win. He's picked up the last 3 points from draws, so they are the draw experts so far in the league so far, but he's already blaming others for his team's failings this season. As a St Mirren fan, does that not ring? I mean, you're not a St Mirren fan, but if you were a St Mirren fan, does that not have the alarm bells ringing?
They're playing black and white. It's close enough. Yeah, no, I think there is cause for concern there, absolutely. I mean, 6 games into a league season and you're already pointing the finger at someone else. I mean, I think Jim Goodwin does know how to put a good team together, but he can't really start relying on these excuses, especially this early on. I think before you even start pointing the finger at someone else, you just really need to evaluate why you're not doing well, why you're not scoring goals. I mean, I've never really been convinced by that St Mirren front line. It really does. For a number of strikers that take the amount of shots that someone like Amy Brophy does, they not exactly get the best goal return. So that itself is a concern, and they're going to need to find the goals from somewhere. Otherwise, fingers are going to get pointed more often, and it's not going to be too long before the fingers are pointed firmly at Goodwin for not being able to get goals out of his team.
We do have a buddy in the chat, Graham Caldwell, coming in to say in the last 2 games at home we should have had 6 points. 2 goals disallowed, 1 for offside, 1 for a foul. I watched the Hibs penalty last week, no doubt that it was. If it is, I mean, I've not seen the incident, Struan, but if it is, as you said, and you've got the arms around them, there's absolutely no excuse for that. That's just, that's cynical. As a professional foul, and you're always going to get that one given against you.
It's always interesting. I always get annoyed when people do it in leagues with VAR, because they can just have a look back and see it, you know. And I think at any level, it's just one of those, if you've got 2 arms around a player in your own box defending a corner, a free kick or what have you, you're giving the referee a really easy decision to make.
We've mentioned VAR a couple of times. I know we're kind of running tight on time, but just in general, would you be for the introduction of VAR in the Scottish League?
Depending on what VAR we get. I know that sounds silly, but if you look at the Premier League last season, when you had millimetre offsides given and 6-7 minute delays to have a decision, that's the VAR I'd be against. But if you look at the 2018 World Cup and the 2020 Euros that we just had there this summer, I think it was quite quick and efficient with the decisions. So if it was deployed in that sense, I'd be happy with it, to be honest, because I think it is a good thing. But you just see so many poor decisions and waiting times that can just really take the sting out of a game.
Absolutely, I can see that side of it. Jack, are you for or against?
I don't know. I just think I don't necessarily know it would be the best idea for Scottish football. I think a lot of the chat in Scottish football can come from a lot of the silly decisions or the funny moments that get missed. But I feel like VR would potentially just dehumanise it almost up here in Scotland, because I feel like we are quite proud of our game as a whole, and I feel like taking that step towards a bit of kind of corporate football, that it just kind of VAR just screams like multi-million-pound leagues and things like that. So I'm not massively keen on it being introduced in Scotland personally.
I think there's still a bit of issues to be ironed out of VAR, and I keep going back to that. But that Kyle Walker penalty being overturned last weekend, if that is VAR's idea of having a clearly obvious error being overturned, then that's not the VAR that I want in Scottish football, because, there's going to just be more controversy than what we already have, and that's the last thing I think that we need in Scotland. Let's get back to the game. It is, as I said, the live game on Sky Sports main event this Sunday. 12 noon kickoff as 10th place St Mirren plays 7th place Aberdeen. Going into the predictions, I'll kick it off. I'm going to sit on the fence and I'm going to go for a 1 each draw. Who wants to go next?
I'll go for a 2-1 Aberdeen. I think this is going to be one of the games that they can pick up a result. I don't think they'll keep a clean sheet. As I said, they only kept one so far in the opening day against United, and I think this could be one of those results. As we say, it's tough for Glass right now. They've still got a lot of tough teams to play. I think this is a fixture that they have to get 3 points from.
Do you agree with that, Jack?
I would agree with that, to be honest. I mean, I know I've kind of backed the fact that they might not be as successful down at New St Mirren Park as they potentially would hope to be, but I'll probably back a narrow 1-0 Aberdeen win in this one.
I tell you what, I do think Aberdeen need to learn to start putting the ball in the back of the net. You look at it, Ramirez is the top goal scorer in the league on 2. There's not really been anything else coming from round about it, so I think chances will be few and far between. And St Mirren, they're the draw experts, so that's why I went for the draw. Paul Cockwell also agrees with me. He thinks it will be a draw, and John Mulhern is going for a St Mirren victory. I wonder what our resident buddy thought. Graham Caldwell, you can let us know how you think St Mirren will go on at the weekend. We have 2 games left to cover with 10 minutes to go on the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. We've just passed 15,000 subscribers, and our target for the end of the year is 20,000, so any help you can do will be appreciated. Also, leave a thumbs up on the video. That helps us massively, so everyone who's watching, if you could leave a thumbs up, that would be very much appreciated. Let's go to the capital, though, as third place Hearts take on the victors of the game at the Spaghetti Ad last week in Livingston. If you've got this one on the coupon, it is 5-9 for Rangers. It's 13-5 the draw, and 13-2 for David Martindale's Livingston. Now, let's start with Livingston. Obviously, an impressive victory over Celtic last Sunday. And the player that stuck out for me, having been there at the game, was I can't even pronounce his name. Obilaye?
Obilaye, the former Queen of South man.
Yeah. I was really, really impressed with him. Anything that came into the box, he was heading it clear. And to be honest, it really set the tone for Celtic, because every ball that kept coming across, he was the guy, clear it. I don't think Livingston would create a lot of chances if they didn't have the counter-attacking style of football, but we saw what happened when they went to Ibrox the other day. They were very close to taking the lead. I honestly think David Martindale's got a strategy at Livingston, and it works for him, and I can see him adopting the exact same thing, Jack, when he goes to Tynecastle tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, especially the other night. I mean, they really did stifle Rangers for the entirety of the first half, and then they were really good at setting up against them throughout the remainder of the game. And even though they did go on to lose it, it was still a fairly impressive performance. And obviously, they get a huge result against Celtic last weekend. I mean, you said it yourself, a lot of really impressive defending. So I feel that up against the bigger sides, they know exactly what they need to do in terms of limiting them to very little and just sitting in the trenches and just taking those waves of attack and potentially looking to get something on the break. And I feel it could happen again this weekend. I feel like, although it's a trip away to Tynecastle, which can be a pretty ugly place to go for a away team, I feel like they could potentially hit the nail on the head with something and really buckle down and get a really good defensive performance once again.
Yeah, what'd you make of that performance at the weekend then, Struan? Obviously impressive for Livingston, but Hearts, no one really expected Ross County to get anything against them.
No, it was really impressive. When Hearts went 1-0 up through Boyce, I thought that was just going to be it, to be honest. I thought it was just going to be a formality, but Ross County did really well to get back into this game, Spittle scoring 2 goals, and then at the end of the day, it was a fantastic free kick from Kingsley that took away 3 points from them. So I think Ross County can really be happy with that result, but from a Hearts perspective, I think that's really important as well. In a game that seemed like they had thrown away, they managed to come up with a really big moment late on.
Now, this is an interesting one for the stats people. So the last time that Hearts beat Livingston in the Premier League was in 2006 when Rudy Scaccio scored a late goal to win 3-2. And Livingston's last win against Hearts was a 5-0 victory in December 2018. So, I mean, it's been a long time since Hearts got a top flight win over them, although their last one did come in February 2015 in the Championship. I guess it's really a case of two teams that haven't played each other a lot over the last few years, but Hearts have had a really good start to the season, Jack, and I think if I was putting my money on this one, I would fancy Hearts to keep that going.
No, you're absolutely right, Colin. I mean, it's a bit of an unknown quantity, these two coming together, but I think you're bang on. Hearts have really impressed coming into this season. I know Nielsen's spoken a lot about the fact that he kind of wishes he'd started even a bit better in some of these games, of course. Dropping points to Ross County isn't exactly going to be a fantastic result, but I mean, considering they ended up going 2-1 down at some point, you'd argue they'd be happy to walk away with a point in the end. But I think if you were a betting man, you probably would be swinging towards the Gorgie team for this weekend anyway.
Yeah, and Struan, I know it's your arch rivals. They are going in with a fit squad. They do potentially have the chance to go top of the table after this one. I've got to say, if I start the predictions, I fancy Hearts to win 2-1. Which way would your pound be going?
I'd also be going towards Hearts, to be honest. I think it pains me to say it, but I think they've been absolutely fantastic this year, to be honest. They've done so well, especially in the big games. You know, I saw a few people saying from a Hearts point of view that, of course, they face Livingston just as they start their season up with a win against Celtic. But I do back Hearts to win this game. I think so many players from their side have impressed me. Cammy Devlin, I thought, as well, has looked really good since coming in. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 Hearts victory.
2-0 for Hearts. Jack, did we get a score from yourself?
No, but I'll give one, and I will say... I'll say 2-0 as well. 2-0 Hearts.
2-0. So all of us backing a Hearts win. That means Livingston will definitely pick up the 3 points. That is a 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday at Tynecastle. Pay-per-view, $18.50 if you are interested in that. One game left to cover, and that is at Fir Park, where on form Motherwell face Ross County. This is a Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff. £12 on the pay-per-view if you're interested in picking that one up. If it's going on the coupon, it's 5-7 for Motherwell. It is 11-4 for the draw, and Ross County are out as far as 15-4. Now, Jack, Motherwell are unbeaten in 5. They had some really good game management at Ibrox, which really kind of annoyed a lot of the Rangers fans, especially what I heard on the phone in through the week. And I think a lot of that is coming from the summer signing of Ojala, the centre-half. 5 games, a goal, an assist, and they've only conceded 2 goals in that time. And if they can keep the ball out the back of the net, they don't score a lot, but it'll give them the best chance of winning the game.
No, they've been really impressive, Colin. I mean, Ojala as well, he's been fantastic since coming in the summer. I feel like Motherwell just kind of flown under the radar. They've just gone about their business this season very quietly and very effectively. And I'd imagine that's something that Graham Alexander's going to want to continue for a long, long time. And I mean, I've never really spoken too grandly about this Ross County team, especially with the man they've got at the helm coming into this season. I'm not exactly going to sing his praises at any given opportunity. So I'm always going to be looking as negatively on them as I possibly can. It's also to the point that I predicted them to finish dead last at the start of the season. So hopefully it's just more for covering my own back in my predictions. But no, I can definitely see them getting a fairly confident professional performance done this weekend against Ross County for sure.
I have to say, though, in Ross County's last 2 performances against Celtic and against Hearts, they have only picked up the 1 point, but there has been some players that have kind of stood out, Struan. For me, Regan Charles-Cook is the kind of star in that Ross County squad, and I think if he gets a run at some of those Motherwell defenders, then he could cause them a bit of trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw as well Spell scoring 2 goals against Hearts at the weekend. It's looking promising for Ross County at the recent times. Obviously, as we say, I'm not really too fussed on praising the manager or anything like that, but they have started to look a little bit better. I think from their point of view, though, it's a bit of a shame that they're coming up against in-form Motherwell, because I've been really impressed with Motherwell so far this season. I mean, their only defeat was the opening day, and it was one of these just defeats, a penalty away. But I think they're absolutely excellent. Another summer signing who was mentioned in the comments there from Jerry H, Kevin Van Veen, who's been absolutely fantastic. And Tony Watt, it looks like a man reborn, to be honest. He looks unbelievable. And he's still only about 27, 28. So I think it's Ross County have, reasons to be optimistic, but at the same time, I think Motherwell just look fantastic.
Yeah, and another good initiative from the Motherwell team is the food bank collection that they were doing ahead of the game against Celtic on October 16th. So if you are getting along to that game, then if you can help out, please do. So as I said, Motherwell the favourites on this one, 5-7. We've got a minute to kind of wrap this up. So 5-7 for the Motherwell win, 11-4 for the draw, 15-4 for Ross County. I'll kick it off, and I back Motherwell to win 2-0. Just like Daniel Mack does here. Jack, I'll go to you.
The exact same as a pair of you. 2-0 to Motherwell.
2-0. Is it going to be 2-0 all round, Struan?
Oh, I'll go for a bit different then. I'll go 3-0. Tony Watt hat trick. There we go. Something really extraordinary here.
We'll be interested to see what the odds would be on that one. Jerry H wraps us up here saying, right, Colin, 85 degrees here, so time for some cold cervezas out of the back. Another good show, guys. Enjoy your weekend. We'll enjoy your weekend to everyone who has joined us this Friday evening on the State of Scottish Football. A big thank you to Jack and to Struan, who have helped me out with the prediction show this weekend. If you are going to the game, then do enjoy it. If not, then catch any of the games on pay-per-view that you want. We'll be back on Monday to review how our predictions went and how the teams got on. But until then, stay safe and enjoy your weekend.